Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into snow so deep and silence so thick, you'll almost forget you're not actually hiking through the Italian Alps in 1959. You've got frost clinging to your eyelashes, your breath steaming in the freezing air, and ahead of you, something isn't right. 14 hikers, sprawled in a wide, broken circle. Their boots are missing. Their coats, tossed yards away. Some of them are half buried in snowdrifts, and they're all dead. No avalanche signs, no wild animal tracks, just the stillness of the mountains holding its breath. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, what time is it where you are, and where in the world are you listening from? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle forward, boots crunching over the icy crust. The sight is eerily undisturbed. One woman is lying face up, eyes open, arms frozen mid-motion. Another body nearby is curled into a fetal position barefoot, with one sock tucked into the crook of his knee, like he'd been trying to hide it. You start counting. 1, 2, 7, 14. All in all, they form a lopsided, uneven ring like they were trying to keep warm, or maybe perform something. The spacing is irregular. Some lie alone, others in tight clusters. Their clothes are scattered, not shredded, but placed in deliberate, almost tender piles. Gloves, scarves, even a pair of woolen trousers folded at the cuff. It doesn't make sense. You know the classic hypothermia signs, sure disorientation, paradoxical undressing, but this looks choreographed. Historians still argue whether the group was trying to survive or surrender. The snow around them, undisturbed by struggle, tells no stories. But their eyes, frozen open in that alpine hush, suggest something far stranger than frostbite. You check the date again, March 1959, and you try not to think about another group, thousands of miles away, who died the same month under eerily similar circumstances. We'll get to them later. For now, you're fixated on the note found, tucked in one of the girl's coat linings. It read, simply, "The Red Man watches." No one ever figured out who that referred to. No red jacket in the group, no red flags on the map. Some called it nonsense. Others claimed it was an attempt at black humor. But the investigators kept it in their file under unresolved symbols. And here's the thing. Their tent was intact, but abandoned. Food left uneaten. Hiking poles still upright in the snow. The kind of scene that feels paused. Like everyone just stood up at once and walked out into the cold, on purpose. One of the rescuers, a mountain ranger named Luca Bernardi, refused to speak to the press for years. When he finally did, all he said was, "It felt like we'd interrupted something, like we weren't supposed to find them yet." A little dramatic? Maybe. But then again, Bernardi was known for ice-calm logic and a lifelong distrust of folklore. So for him to say something like that makes you want to dig deeper. Quirky side note among the group's supplies was a tiny, hand-carved flute found buried near one of the bodies. It wasn't on any list of gear. When cleaned and tested, it played a 4-note scale. The same 4 notes used to call for help in old Alpine signal codes. No one knows who brought it or why. Back in town, the whispers started fast. Cult, military test, poison, something they ate, but toxicology came back clean. No rare herbs, no ergot poisoning, no drugs, aside from aspirin. And yet, all 14 hikers were missing one thing in common: socks. Not a single body had socks still on. That detail haunted even the most hardened detectives. There's something undeniably chilling about people stripping down in sub-zero temperatures without visible trauma. Not clawing for warmth, not curled up in terror, just lying there, like they expected the cold to swallow them gently. You move closer. One man's hands are cupped over his chest. In his frozen palms, a tiny leather-bound notebook, swollen with damp. The ink had mostly bled out, but one phrase could still be read: "We moved wrong." Moved wrong? What does that even mean? Turned the wrong way? Broke a rule? You wonder if it's a hiking reference, a spiritual one, or some inside joke that now lies dead in the snow. That notebook now sits in a museum archive in Bolzano, but it's rarely displayed. Apparently, staff say it makes the room colder whenever it's out. Folklore nonsense? Sure. But you've heard enough museum curators whisper things like that to know it's never just a joke. The cold gets deeper as you stand there, imaginary or not, and the question is still hanging in the air. Why did they all remove their clothes? Why didn't they run? Why didn't someone survive long enough to crawl back? No answers yet. But the trail they took? That's where we go next. The trail wasn't even on the official maps. That's the first thing that tips you off. You crouch beside a faded topographical sketch in a cracked leather case, found near the abandoned camp. The path is marked in shaky pencil, winding up a lesser-known ridge, bypassing the marked lodge routes. A tiny X is scrawled just before a bend in the elevation lines. Why this route? Why stray from the safe, maintained paths in favor of something rugged, barely visible from the air? You trace it with your finger, imagining the terrain. A narrow goat trail, steep and slippery, with jagged shale underfoot and no markers but old cairns. Not exactly beginner-friendly, but here's the kicker. This wasn't a group of amateurs. Of the 14 hikers, at least 9 had extensive alpine experience. One of them, a woman named Chiara Dossi, had even written for an Italian mountaineering magazine. Another, Gianni Pradella, was a ski instructor and seasonal guide. They should have known better. Historians still argue whether the deviation from the official route was intentional. Some claim they wanted isolation, a true wilderness test, raw nature, no safety nets. Others suspect they were avoiding something or someone. Fringe theorists love to point out that 3 of the group members had participated in a politically sensitive demonstration a year earlier. Was this trip a retreat? An escape? A punishment? Officially, the group was on a winter endurance trek, a 10-day circuit designed by their leader, Ettore Brunetti, a wiry ex-army man with a disdain for modern gear. No radios, no flares, no GPS, obviously. Just paper maps, compasses, and his mantra. If you can't do it like they did in 1900, stay home. You imagine following Brunetti up that snow-slick path, lungs burning, calves on fire, wind tearing at your scarf. He never looked back, they said. Always 10 steps ahead, always certain. And that's probably why no one questioned the new route when he suddenly veered right that morning, away from the trail markers. Snow had just started to fall. Nothing major yet, just light flurries. Spirits were high. Chiara even took a photo of the group making a goofy pyramid pose at the fork in the trail. They called it the Roman Stack. That photo, by the way, would later become infamous. It was the last image taken before everything went wrong. If you look closely, real close, you'll notice something odd in the background. A narrow, red shape half visible between 2 pine trunks. Some say it's just a distortion. Others say it's him, the so-called man in the red jacket. But we're not there yet. For now, you're squinting into white. The further the group went, the more the snow thickened. Visibility dropped. Trees thinned out. The path narrowed. At one point, it crossed a gully with a frozen stream below. A fall from that ledge would snap bones like twigs. They used a rope system to help each other across. Brunetti went first. He always did. Here's where it gets stranger. That night, they camped near a rock overhang. The next morning, they didn't continue up the slope like the trail suggests. They turned downhill into a drainage basin that locals call Il Sonno, the sleep. No maps show a trail there, just an empty space with steep walls, dead fir trees, and swirling wind. And now we come to a strange little fact. That basin, it's the only spot in that region where magnetic compasses have been recorded spinning erratically. Modern hikers still report weird signal drops and sudden nausea in that exact zone. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe something in the Earth's crust just doesn't want you hanging around. There's an account from 1912, written by a priest who used to hike those valleys. He describes a whispering funnel of wind that turns your thoughts inside out. Sounds poetic until you realize that 3 different hikers who survived near-miss accidents in the basin later described something similar: hearing voices. One called it a choir under the snow. So when Brunetti led his group into that hollow, he may not have known the full story, or maybe he did, and just didn't believe it. Either way, the group set up camp there. Tents staked with difficulty in loose snow. No firewood in sight. Dinner? Cold beans, by the looks of the discarded cans. And then the snowstorm came. Locals say it was freakish. Sharp temperature drop, wind shifting every hour. You couldn't hear someone yelling 5 feet away. The official report clocks the storm's arrival at 2:16 a.m., based on barometric data. But villagers in the valley below claim they saw strange flickering lights above the ridge hours earlier. Like sparks in the fog, one woman recalled. Like something testing the air. Freak lightning? Aurora borealis? Historians still argue whether there were atmospheric anomalies that week. Some blame a passing low-pressure system. Others think it was psychological suggestion. But regardless of what it was, that storm changed everything. You picture it now. 15 people trapped in a snow basin, tents flapping, no visibility, no sound but the shriek of wind and the snap of cloth. And Brunetti stubborn, proud, unflinching, still refusing to turn back. They should have gone back. You know that. They knew that. But they didn't. Instead, they stayed another night. And then, one by one, they began to undress. You wake before dawn, the snow pressing in around you like a second skin, and everything feels wrong. The inside of the tent is colder than it should be. Your breath fogs in the air, but there's something else, something underneath the cold. It's quiet. Not mountain quiet, not winter quiet. A hollow kind of silence, like you're buried in cotton or deep underwater. You poke your head out. The fire pit from last night is untouched. No footprints. But Chiara is already outside, crouched by the gear bags. She's barefoot. "Where are your boots?" you mutter, teeth chattering. She doesn't answer, just hums a low, tuneless note under her breath and continues folding a scarf into a perfect square. Her fingers are purple, her lips cracked. You pull back into the tent, trying to make sense of it. You're not alone. The others are stirring too. One guy is laughing softly. Not the haha kind of laugh, more like he remembered a joke that stopped being funny halfway through. Another girl is sobbing, but without sound. Just a silent, hitching breath. Her shirt is off, no one's giving orders, no one's speaking. And somewhere in your mind, something starts ringing. A low pressure-like vibration, like you're inside a bell that's just been struck. Historians still argue whether this behavior fits the classic hypothermia model: paradoxical undressing, disorientation, terminal burrowing. All textbook symptoms, but what they don't talk about enough is how synchronized it was. You don't take off your socks and arrange them by color unless you think it matters. And they did think it mattered. At least, that's what the investigators concluded when they found those clothes. Each folded carefully, placed beside the bodies like offerings, gloves tucked into boots, scarves looped neatly. You might recognize that pattern from something else. Burial preparation. Not cultural, not religious, but instinctual. Quirky tidbit, Brunetti was obsessed with pre-Roman burial sites. He once gave a whole lecture on alpine sky burials, where the dead were laid out on mountaintops to be reclaimed by the elements. Chiara had joked that he was the only guy who wanted to be freeze-dried after death. So maybe that explains the next part. You crawl from the tent, feet crunching into new snow, and you see them. A dozen figures, scattered in a wide arc, all of them undressed to varying degrees, all of them oddly serene. It's not panic, not a scramble, it's procession-like. And there's Brunetti, shirtless, kneeling in the snow, arms stretched to the sky like he's conducting a silent orchestra. This is where modern explanations start to fray. Sure, hypothermia can cause mental collapse, but why did everyone experience it simultaneously? Why were no clothes torn off in desperation? No frostbitten limbs clawing for heat? Just methodical, almost ceremonial disrobing. Investigators tried to recreate the scene with mannequins in wind tunnels. The temperatures matched known risk zones, but something didn't: the timing. For that level of exposure, they should have been dead hours earlier. And yet, their watches, yes, several were still working, showed synchronized stop times, clustered within a 13-minute window. What happened in those 13 minutes? Here's where it gets weird. One body, Gianni's, was found 20 meters from the others, lying face down. Underneath him, a perfectly intact compass, its needle spinning slowly. Investigators thought it might be magnetic interference from surrounding rock, but subsequent geological surveys found no magnetic anomalies. So why was only his compass affected? And why did someone scratch a line into the frost nearby? Follow the soft. Nobody knows what that means. The phrase appears in no mountaineering handbooks. Some believe it's a misremembered quote or a hallucinated instruction, but others think it refers to sound or snow or something less visible. Still, by dawn, 14 people had laid themselves bare to the mountain. No signs of external trauma, no animal tracks, no avalanche. Just one group decision, silent and unspoken, to step into the snow and surrender. The last person to go was a young man named Luca. His footprints were the freshest. He walked in a slow arc away from the tent, pausing once to sit on a boulder, then lay back. His arms were crossed over his chest like he was preparing for sleep. At his side, a snow angel, not scratched in desperation, not flailing. A full, symmetrical, careful snow angel. Historians still argue whether that gesture was playful or devotional. Here's the thing. One of the alpine rescue dogs refused to step into the clearing. It barked and whined, planted its paws, and had to be dragged away. The handler later quit the service altogether, claimed the mountain was singing through the trees, said he'd never heard anything like it before or since. So you tell yourself it was the cold, the wind, the dark. But you can't stop hearing Kiara's humming, that same low note, over and over, like the mountain had chosen its lullaby, and they had no choice but to listen. The firewood's gone, not just unused gone. The pile they'd gathered, you remember stacking it yourself the night before, has vanished without a trace. No burn marks, no trail, just a small, empty crater in the snow where it had been. You stare at the hollow, half expecting to find some paw prints, or at least drag marks. Nothing. And your mind begins to reach for explanations like branches in the dark. Wind? No, too clean. Animals? No tracks. Theft? Who would take firewood in a storm and leave the tents untouched? Historians still argue whether this detail was overlooked in early reports or quietly omitted. The original investigation logs reference missing fuel, but only once, buried in a footnote. You wonder who redacted the second mention, or why. Nearby, Ettore Brunetti's journal lies splayed open, half covered by snow. Notebooks don't usually last long in these conditions, but this one was wax-sealed and double-bound, like something precious. You pull it out and gently brush off the frost. The last full entry is scrawled and jagged. Storm came earlier. Hard to hold time in my head. Chiara still humming. She says it helps her breathe. The rest are quiet. Too quiet. My hands feel far away. My chest burns, but it's not cold. Not anymore. It's clearer now. Then, just underneath, a final sentence, almost like an afterthought. We're not alone. No names, no panic, no blame. Just that. 4 words that echo louder than anything else in the book. You sit back on your heels and look out across the campsite. The snow is falling softer now. The kind that doesn't sting your cheeks, just settles in your lashes like ash. It's peaceful. If you didn't know what had happened here, you'd think it was the perfect winter escape. You wander over to where Matteo's body was found shirtless, with his coat spread neatly beside him. Not on him, beside. You kneel and brush away the powdery snow. The coat is dry beneath, as if he'd laid it there intentionally, shielding it from something else. And inside the coat pocket, sewn into the lining, you find a sliver of paper. Faded, but legible. A quote, it seems. The fire burns cleanest in the mind. It's underlined 3 times. A fringe historian named Livia Quaranta later linked this quote to a 15th century manuscript found in a Benedictine monastery not far from the same region. That manuscript, titled Del Sonno Lucido, on the lucid sleep, was a collection of visionary accounts, dreams, hallucinations, possibly drug-induced episodes, all describing the white place between the breathing. Some researchers dismissed it as medieval poetry. Others noticed one chilling detail. Each of the visionaries reported the same image: people walking into the snow, shedding their clothes as they went. Quaranta was laughed out of academia for connecting that manuscript to the hiker's case. But she kept digging. According to her private notes, later released by her nephew, she believed Brunetti had found a copy of Del Sonno Lucido during his military posting in the region and became obsessed with it. Was this entire trek some kind of experiment? A reenactment? A pilgrimage? That theory never stuck. The public preferred simpler answers: hypothermia, isolation, a leader too proud to turn back. But you're standing here now, looking at 4 boots lined in a perfect row, and none of those answers seem big enough to hold what happened here. You walk uphill a bit, toward a ledge the group passed on day 3. From there, you can see the path winding back into the forest, the trail they should have taken, the safe route, the one with a staff shelter, just 6 hours hike away. Why didn't they go that way? One theory suggests they were following sounds, whispers on the wind, harmonic frequencies that seemed to come from a different direction. Multiple witnesses from nearby villages reported hearing singing from the ridgelines during the storm, even though no one was supposed to be up there. Sound does strange things in the mountains, that's true. It bends, refracts, sometimes travels miles. But human voices? Kiara's brother once told an interviewer that she used to hum when she was scared, long, low notes that would calm her breathing. But in the days before she left, she'd started humming before things got scary, as if preparing, or tuning herself to something only she could hear. You find another footprint, singular, not part of the group cluster, deeper, pressed harder into the snow, leading off into the forest in a direction none of the others walked. You follow it. It leads to a small clearing with a flat stone at the center, partially buried. You brush the snow off and find a carved-shaped concentric circles, crudely etched but deliberate. There's no record of this in the case files, no mention in Brunetti's journal, but it matches something. You flip through a photo tucked in his journal's last pages, the final image. Not of a person, but of a symbol drawn in soot on the back wall of their tent. Same pattern, same circles. You sit down on the edge of the stone, suddenly aware of how quiet it's become again. No wind, no birds, just your heartbeat and the sound of your breath. You wonder if they sat here too, if they heard something, if they felt the cold drift away and thought, yes, this is the moment. This is where I leave it behind. And maybe, if you stay here long enough, you'll hear it too. You're not even sure how long you've been sitting there on that cold stone slab, staring at the spiral, but something has changed. The sky above is a bruised kind of blue now, like it's holding its breath. The trees surrounding the clearing feel closer than they should, and the wind has stopped completely. Your body registers the cold, but your mind doesn't seem to care. The snow against your skin feels soft, almost comforting. You're starting to understand why someone might lay down in it, why someone might remove their clothes, why it might even feel right. That's when you notice the pattern in the snow. Not tracks exactly, more like impressions. Radiating out from the stone in a ring, shallow dips in the powdery crust, 14 of them. Like shadows of where the bodies could have been, except they weren't found here. At least, not officially. Historians still argue whether this site was part of the original scene. The official reports make no mention of it, and rescue logs end a kilometer up the ridge. But one rescuer, an alpine guide named Carlo Mancini, told a local paper in 1972 that there had been another place, a strange circle in the woods he wasn't allowed to photograph. He died the following winter in an unrelated avalanche. Or so they say. You stand. You move through the ring, one slow step at a time. Your boots pressing into the hollows like you're reawakening something. Your breath makes soft clouds. In the middle again now, back at the stone, and that's when you remember the camera. Not the ones the search party found. The other one. They didn't know about it at the time. It only came to light 10 years later when a hiker found a rusted metal tin under a collapsed pine. Inside, a 35mm camera, water damaged but intact. And the film? Surprisingly undeveloped. The roll was processed by an amateur archivist named Gianni Lattori in Turin. He swore under oath that he didn't alter the negatives, but only some of the shots came through. Grainy, blurry, but clear enough to send chills down your spine. There were the usual pre-hike photos, smiling faces, a boot stuck in a snowbank, Kiara with that ridiculous thermos she decorated in gold foil stars. And then, the last 3 frames. 1. A wide shot of the ridge, storm clouds building in the distance. The angle suggests someone was scouting ahead alone. 2. A photo of the snow at night, black sky, flash too bright, nothing but flurries in the foreground, and something red, far in the back. A vertical shape, half hidden behind a tree, blurred, but too straight, too tall to be natural. 3, and then the final shot. This is the one no one can explain. It's the group huddled together, not posing, but clearly aware of the camera. They're outside, under the stars, half-dressed, not smiling, not afraid, just waiting, looking into the lens like they're expecting it. And off to the right, half out of frame, the unmistakable edge of a red sleeve, the man in the red jacket. He's never been identified. Not among the original group. Not in any of the search parties. Nobody matched his description, and yet there he is present, implied, invited, maybe. You wonder aloud, was he real? A stranger who joined them? A hallucination shared by multiple people? Fringe theorists call him the Red Witness. Some even say he's not a person at all, but a metaphor that manifests physically like a tulpa, born from collective fear. You scoff, then catch yourself. You're standing in a spiral of snow prints, talking to no one. Who are you to scoff? One fun but lesser-known tidbit: in 1961, 2 years after the incident, an American cryptographer working on Cold War radio intercepts published a fringe theory suggesting the hikers were victims of infrasound disruption, a rare atmospheric phenomenon where low-frequency sound waves induce panic, confusion, and hallucinations. It was later linked loosely to the Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia. The theory never gained traction, but even NASA quietly tested infrasound effects during deep-sea submersion studies. Still, there's something about the quiet here that feels too designed. You look up at the trees again. For a moment, you could swear they've shifted just slightly inward, like a breath being held all around you. You take a step back from the stone. There's a soft indent in the snow where your foot had been just seconds ago, and it's already filling back in. The snowfall is denser now. You imagine Chiara standing here, boots in hand, staring at the spiral with her humming mouth and blank expression, Brunetti beside her, perhaps whispering something ancient, something borrowed from a manuscript no one else believed in, and then the others following silently, reverently, as if this wasn't the end of the hike, but the beginning of something else. A passage. You think about how their bodies were found, limbs relaxed, faces still, eyes open. Not afraid, not frozen in panic. And suddenly the phrase from Brunetti's journal rings louder. It's clear now. You step out of the circle and glance back only once. There are no footsteps behind you. You leave the spiral clearing behind, but it doesn't leave you. The image stays lodged in your mind like a splinter you can't dig out. 14 hollowed snow prints, perfectly placed, and that spiral etched into stone like an invitation nobody should accept. As you hike back toward where the bodies were actually found, you try to piece it all together. The timeline, the choices, the utter strangeness, and you keep circling back to the same question. If this was just hypothermia, why did it unfold like a ritual? Because what you're seeing now is not just a tragedy. It's choreography, intentional, strangely serene. At the edge of the tree line lies the largest cluster of bodies. You remember this from the old photographs. 4 of them huddled together, partially covered in snow. Their hands, some of them, interlaced, like they were holding on through something, or preparing to let go. And nearby, their clothing, again neatly arranged, not scattered, not torn off in madness, placed, like they didn't just collapse, but took their time. One woman had her coat laid over a rock beside her, with a clean sock tucked beneath it. Not worn, tucked. You try not to let your brain drift into meaning-making territory, but come on. That's a pattern. Investigators found no signs of foul play, no trauma, no toxin, no animal attacks. One autopsy noted small abrasions on the fingertips, possibly from clawing at snow, but faint, minimal. No fractures, no bruises, just silence. Historians still argue whether Brunetti truly believed this was survivable. Some say he miscalculated the storm. Others say he intended to test the limits of endurance. But a tiny campfire ring was discovered, built but never lit. Dry kindling stacked beside it, completely untouched. That might be the weirdest detail of all. They had the tools. They had the fuel. They could have made fire, but no one did. Why? Some claim it was the wind. Some say the matchbooks got wet. But one hiker, Marco, had a lighter on him. It worked when tested, and yet He never struck it. He died with it still zipped in his jacket pocket, 10 feet from the stacked firewood. Weirder still, his gloves were folded beneath his head like a pillow. It was as though they were waiting for the cold, for the dark, for something else. That's where the idea of ritual keeps creeping back in, and not the spooky cult in the woods kind either. Something older, quieter, a kind of surrender. Remember the journal quote, "The fire burns cleanest in the mind"? Well, it turns out that line, or some variation of it, shows up in an obscure alpine myth dating back to the 1700s. The tale goes that during particularly harsh winters, villagers believed they could walk into the white and become one with the mountain, leaving behind their physical bodies for something lighter than bone. Just superstition? Probably. But stories like that tend to stick around for a reason. A quirky fact: one of the group members, Elisa, had a necklace on when her body was recovered. Nothing fancy, just a wooden charm carved in the shape of a spiral, like the one on the stone, like the one drawn in soot in the tent. No one else in the group had anything like it. Her sister later confirmed it had belonged to their grandmother, who used to tell snow songs from her own childhood, rhyming tales about people who could melt into silence if they listened hard enough to the wind. There's that humming again, in your head, low and soft. You swear you can almost hear it through the trees. But maybe it's just your imagination layering Kiara's old habit over your thoughts. Still, the fact remains. The entire group experienced some sort of synchronized shift, all within a short window, all seemingly willing to discard clothing, lie down in sub-zero snow, and this is the part that sticks do so without panicking. It's like they entered a shared mental state, one that somehow made sense to all of them. Which brings us to the only outlier in the case. There was one member of the group, Luca, that died a full 50 meters from the others. The spacing was strange. His trail branched off mid-slope, leading in a slow arc toward a shallow outcrop. His body was found sitting upright, back against the stone, legs outstretched, hands in his lap. No coat, no shoes. But unlike the others, his face had a different expression. Not peaceful, startled. Eyewitnesses described his eyes as wide open, his jaw slightly ajar, like he saw something he couldn't process. Something that caught him off guard when the others had already adjusted. And then, of course, there's what he was holding. A tape recorder, not the pocket-sized kind. This was bulky, homemade. A tangle of wires and parts jammed into a military ration tin, with a spinning reel still half exposed. The tape inside? Too damaged to fully play, but technicians recovered 37 seconds of audio. The result? Nothing definitive, but unsettling. Wind, yes. Snow crunches. And somewhere, faintly in the distance, a low, droning hum, mechanical, pulsing. And then a single voice, not shouting, not crying, just whispering clearly over and over. Don't forget your skin. Don't forget your skin. Don't forget. The recording cuts out. And that line, well, it didn't help the rumors. Theories exploded. Government experiments, sound weapons, cult, psychosis. Even alien contact got its 15 minutes. Historians still argue whether that recording was even authentic. Some believe it was a prank or hoax, added later. Others swear it's real, and that Luca tried to document whatever was happening before it reached him. But the audio had one last detail. Right at the end, just before the tape warps completely, a soft chime. 4 notes, rising, falling. The same 4 tones as the carved flute found buried in the snow. You remember that, don't you? And the question's still with you, louder now than ever. What did they hear out there in the snow that made dying seem like something else entirely? You hike in silence now, crunching slowly across the snowpack. The clouds have lowered again, pressing down like a lid. The trees on either side stretch tall and stark, their branches bare and unmoving. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls out a long, hollow note, and the sound echoes a little too long, like the forest isn't echoing it at all, just answering. Ahead of you is the last major site where evidence was found, a slope beneath a sheer cliff face where 5 more bodies had been discovered, partially buried in a line. Unlike the first cluster near the camp, these 5 had been moving, crawling, it looked like. Hands, and knees, slow, in formation. The investigators thought they'd been trying to get back to camp, maybe disoriented in the storm. But again, something about the spacing was strange measured, like they were crawling to something, not from it. The lead body, Brunetti's, had both arms stretched out, as if reaching for something he never touched. And strangest of all, no sign of panic. If you didn't know better, you might mistake it for a ritual procession. Historians still argue whether this formation was intentional. The alignment was too clean, too orderly. Their heads all faced the same direction. Each had removed at least one item of clothing. Two of them had no shoes, yet their feet showed minimal frostbite, which shouldn't be possible. Fringe theorists like to call this section the pilgrimage line. It became a minor obsession for one researcher, a Slovak anthropologist named Mirek Dabrowski, who visited the site every winter for 6 years. His final theory? They were following sound. According to Dabrowski's notes, the shape of the cliff behind the bodies created a natural echo chamber, a concave wall that bounced back low-frequency sound. Hikers sometimes reported hearing their own footsteps come back delayed, like someone else was walking just behind them. Others described hearing humming, indistinct voices, or what one mountaineer called a choir without lungs. It might sound ridiculous, but Dabrowski compiled dozens of interviews. One included a Belgian climber who broke down mid-recording, insisting he'd heard someone calling his name, his full name, from somewhere in the rocks. He never returned to the Alps. You kneel by a shallow depression where one of the bodies had been found, Elisa, the one with the spiral pendant. You remember that detail. But there's another. Her eyes had been closed. The others were open, but hers? Gently shut, as if she'd done it herself. You wonder what she saw last, or chose not to see. Beside her, something odd. 5 small stones, arranged in a circle, buried just beneath the snow. No natural rock formations nearby. Not random, not tossed, placed. And beneath the stones, a scorched patch of ground. Not fire damage, not recent, just singed earth. Like something hot had touched it, briefly, precisely. No one mentioned this in the reports. Maybe no one saw it. Maybe no one was supposed to. You dust your hands clean and glance back up toward the ridge. A glint catches your eye metal, half buried. You dig, slowly, fingers numb. It's a belt buckle, simple, leather-stitched, but engraved with an emblem you don't recognize. 2 concentric circles, with a vertical line running down the middle. Not Brunetti's, not standard military issue, not hiking gear, something else. You pocket it, heart beating a little faster now. There's something building an idea, a pattern, a presence, like you're moving deeper into the story, and it's starting to notice you too. And then just as the wind picks up again, you remember the diary. Not Brunetti's, not Chiara's. The other one. The one from the shelter down the valley. The one they passed and didn't enter. The one with the inscription in the margin. That diary belonged to a mountain refuge keeper, retired since the 1940s. His entries were mostly mundane, snowfall levels, supply counts, weather patterns. But in early March of 1959, just before the hikers vanished, he wrote something different. Scrawled, not neatly, ink darker, like pressed harder. They walk the ridge again, red coat among them. Can't stop them this time. That entry was dated 3 days before the group reached the basin. But here's the real kicker. The keeper had been blind for over 20 years. His daughter confirmed it. Cataracts. Degenerative condition. He hadn't seen a thing unaided in 2 decades, yet he wrote it like a man who'd witnessed something right outside his window. They walked the ridge again, as if it had happened before. As if it happened often. Historians still argue whether the diary was tampered with after the fact. The ink was verified as authentic. The handwriting matched older entries. But the explanation? That's where everything falls apart. Some believe it was a moment of clarity. Others think he heard voices, echoes from the mountains that confused him. One researcher, a linguist, pointed out that the word again implies repetition, that he'd seen them, or something like them before. You wonder what else he saw from behind sightless eyes. You return to the procession line. You imagine the 5 of them crawling forward, not stumbling in panic, but moving with purpose, maybe following a sound, maybe chasing a vision, maybe heading to a place they thought they knew. a place that felt like home. In this moment, you realize something you hadn't before. The hikers weren't just victims of nature. They weren't merely lost, or frozen, or confused. They were transformed, not all at once, but gradually, thought by thought, step by step, sock by sock, until finally, they weren't trying to survive anymore. They were becoming something else. And it started right here, on this slope, beneath a cliff that echoes things you're not supposed to hear. You look up again. For the briefest moment, you're sure you see someone standing at the edge of the ridge. Red coat, gone. You blink, and the red coat is gone. Not faded. Not walking away, just gone. Like it never existed. Like your brain filled in a shape your eyes couldn't quite process. Still, your heart hammers in your chest. Because even if it was your imagination, it wasn't the first time you'd seen it, or thought you had. And that's when it clicks. You're not just following the story anymore. You're retracing something's steps, thoughts, maybe even decisions. You're beginning to think like them, feel the pull they must have felt, the strange calm beneath the fear. You take a deep breath and press forward. A little ways down the slope is where they found the last body, the 14th. That part's not talked about often. It wasn't included in the original press reports, not in detail. Anyway, too disturbing. Too inconsistent. But the name was Simona, 27 years old, aspiring ecologist, had joined the group at the last minute, replacing someone who dropped out due to illness. Some say she wasn't really close to the others, just wanted to test herself, a kind of rite of passage. Simona's body was found 2 kilometers from the main camp, deep into a gully no one had any business hiking into. Worse, the rescue teams didn't find her. A pair of amateur snowshoers did. Nearly 2 weeks later, she was seated upright, back against a tree, facing due north. Wrapped around her was a thermal blanket not from the group's gear. None of them carried that brand. And pinned to her jacket was a paper label, written on it in black marker. Returned, but unchanged. That phrase still haunts people. It made headlines in fringe magazines, conspiracy circles, even a few indie horror zines. What did it mean? Who pinned it to her? Had someone found her before the others did? Historians still argue whether Simona died at the same time as the group. Forensic reports were inconclusive. Her body had fewer signs of exposure, less frostbite, more bruising. One arm was broken, but not from a fall. It looked like restraint trauma. And then there's the weirdest part. Her eyes were closed, but stitched shut. That detail, mercifully, was redacted from public records. But leaked scans of the autopsy confirm it. Fine thread. Careful, deliberate. No signs of postmortem decay, meaning it happened just before or just after death. Who did that? Who had the time and the intention to sew someone's eyelids shut in the middle of a snowstorm? You shiver, though the air's still and quiet. Even the birds have gone silent. A quirky little fact? In certain obscure folklore from northern Italy, especially among the old alpine shepherds, there's a belief that if you die with your eyes open, your soul can't find rest. But if someone else closes them, you're sent safely into whatever comes next. Sometimes, if no one's there, they sew them shut. You tell yourself maybe it was an act of kindness, that someone, perhaps another group member still lucid, performed a final rite before succumbing. But if that's true, where did they get the thread? And how did they leave no tracks? You sit near the base of the tree where Simona was found. There's no trace of her now, just packed snow, a few faint drag marks from where her body was removed. You notice a strange mark on the tree trunk. Faint, but definitely not natural. Carved by hand. A circle, bisected with a vertical line same as the belt buckle you found earlier. The symbol again. You're starting to get the sinking feeling that this wasn't a symbol they discovered in the wild. It was one they brought with them. Or worse, it found them. Because here's something nobody likes to mention. This wasn't the first time hikers vanished in this region. Or the second. In fact, a local paper from 1937 mentions a trio of shepherds who never came back from the mountains after a heavy snowfall. Their last known location? Roughly 300 meters from where Simona's body was found. And one of their names written in a letter to a cousin before the trip? Brunetti, Edere's grandfather. Historians still argue whether there's a connection. The timelines don't prove anything directly, but it does raise questions. Did Ettore know what happened up here? Did he come to confront it, continue it, or become part of it? The modern GPS trails from the hikers' phones, recovered from frozen batteries and semi-intact data logs, show something unexpected. The group had circled back several times over the course of 3 days. Same area, same ridges, even passed within 50 meters of a shelter they didn't enter. It's like they were orbiting something invisible, a magnetic pull, a whisper in the trees that made forward progress impossible. That phenomenon has a name: spatial loop drift. A known effect in extreme survival conditions where disoriented individuals begin to unknowingly trace circular paths. But there's one problem: several in the group had compasses, working ones, and they still looped. The only deviation from this loop? Simona's path singular, confident, direct. It was like she broke free, or tried to, and something followed her. You stand again, your breath slow, your hands shaking slightly. Whether from cold or something else, you're not sure anymore. You glance once more at the tree. The symbol is still there, still quietly waiting, as if it's part of the forest now, or always was. You wonder, not for the first time, if someone really did survive, and if they did, why haven't they spoken? Maybe they can't, or maybe they're still listening. You're walking now, but you don't remember standing up. The forest has changed subtly, but enough to notice. The trees are closer together, their trunks darker, almost black. The snow has grown finer, falling like ash instead of flakes. The air carries a smell, faint but sharp, like burnt pine or ozone. You glance behind you, no footprints. Again, you tell yourself it's just the powder, the lightness of it filling in your steps. But deep down, you know that's not it. The snow is fresh, but not that fresh. And then, your eye catches something new. A piece of fabric, half buried, snagged on a branch. You pull it free, gently blue nylon, frayed at the edges. A patch stitched to the corner reads, Italian Alpine Youth Foundation. Below it, a single word, written in black Sharpie. Test. It's not a word you expect on a jacket. You turn it over in your hands, the tag's intact. Size medium, male, no name, no ID, but it's definitely one of theirs. This was never included in the inventory of recovered items. Investigators logged every piece of clothing, every glove, even loose threads, but not this. So either they missed it, or it was never meant to be found. Historians still argue whether the Italian Alpine Youth Foundation had any formal role in this trip. Publicly, it was billed as an informal hike friends, colleagues, a research team, blending recreation and study. But internal documents uncovered years later suggest something else. Funding for the trip had been quietly routed through a university grant tied to a now-defunct department, Psychosensory Environmental Research. Yes, that's a real phrase. And no one seems to know what it meant. The lead grant author? Ettore Brunetti. The project name? Snowfield. Adaptive response to patterned auditory stimuli in isolated cold environments. You close your eyes for a second. That's not a hiking grant. That's an experiment. A quirky detail most people miss? Brunetti wasn't just an amateur historian. He served 2 years as a low-level consultant for the Italian Air Force, specializing in non-lethal stimulus testing. No one cared much until after the tragedy, when journalists tried to dig into his past. The files were sealed, and remain sealed. You step off the trail now, deeper into the woods. Your feet know where to go. Whether that's instinct or something else, you're not sure. But your body feels light, like you're no longer trudging through snow, but gliding just above it. Your hands brush the low branches. The bark is soft and damp, like felt. You hear something, a whisper? Maybe? No, it's lower. More of a presence than a sound. And up ahead, another spiral. Not etched this time, formed. Someone laid branches in the snow, twigs, pine cones, bark, arranged in a perfect spiral, no more than a meter across. In the center, a button, navy plastic, scratched, old. You recognize it from the crime scene photos. It belonged to Chiara, so now the spiral has a name. Why place this here? Who came back to make this after the bodies were recovered? Because here's the unsettling truth. It wasn't here during the first investigation. The aerial photos are definitive. This spiral appeared later, maybe weeks, maybe years, but it's recent. Fresh branches, clean edges, and no tracks. You crouch beside it, not touching, just looking. And that's when you feel it. That low hum, rising from the ground, not from the air. It vibrates gently through your knees, up your spine. It's not loud, but you feel it in your teeth, like a tuning fork struck somewhere far away. Chiara's hum, Brunetti's journal, the tape recorder, the dog that wouldn't enter the clearing. They all mention sound. You're beginning to think this wasn't a visual phenomenon. It was auditory, that whatever led them away from logic, away from survival, didn't speak in words. It sang. One of the few surviving pieces of evidence never made public, a recording from a nearby weather station, placed on a mountaintop 12 kilometers from the site. It captured wind patterns, temperature changes, and audio. On the night the group vanished, the machine logged something strange, an anomaly between 2:17 and 2:33 a.m. The audio file, barely preserved, contains a series of tones. Long, low, vibrational pulses at irregular intervals. Experts likened it to standing inside a giant cello, and over those tones, a second layer, indistinct, organic, breath-like. Some say it's nothing more than wind over rock. Others swear they can hear syllables repeating sounds that don't form language, but rhythm, like a lullaby, without words. Historians still argue whether the sound played any real role. The official cause of death remains hypothermia, but that doesn't explain the clothes, the poses, the spirals, the synchronized calm. You think about the phrase found pinned to Simona's coat, returned, but unchanged. It reads differently now, doesn't it? Not a warning, a lament, as if she was supposed to change, as if the others did. And maybe you understand now what they were doing, why they didn't fight, why they folded their clothes and lay down in the snow. They weren't giving up, they were preparing. You stand again. The spiral remains at your feet, untouched. You don't step inside it. Not yet. But you feel the pull, like a tone buried beneath the silence, a thread tugging at the back of your thoughts. And you think for just a moment, if you stepped in, lay down, and closed your eyes, you might finally hear what they did. You back away from the spiral, slowly, one foot after the other, careful not to break the formation, careful not to disturb the hum. You're not ready yet, not ready to hear it fully. But something deep in your chest, beneath the breath, beneath the heartbeat, aches like you've almost forgotten something important. Something that was yours once, and something this mountain wants you to remember. You return to the main trail, if it even is the trail anymore. The landscape feels unfamiliar now, like you've stepped sideways through memory, instead of forward through space. The trees are thicker, the snow less crisp. The sky, pale, the color of bones soaked in ink. And still, no birds, no rustle of branches, no wind, just that endless hush. You reach what was once the final campsite, or at least what the investigators called it. But everything here looks wrong, not disturbed, arranged. The tents, still collapsed, were left behind by the recovery team, weather damaged and empty. But inside one of them, the largest, you find something strange, a circle of soot on the inner wall. Again, and next to it, 7 stones, lined up carefully along the canvas floor, all roughly the same size, none native to this ridge. Someone brought them here. What's the significance of 7? That's never been clear. But fringe researchers point to an obscure mountaineering superstition known only in tiny alpine communities, that the human body becomes unstable after 7 days above a certain altitude, not unstable like sick, unstable like porous, as in open to what no one says. The legends are fragmented, but old shepherds avoided staying that long in the heights, citing dream rot and sky whispers as symptoms of those who remain too long above the tree line. A quirky, forgotten belief? Maybe. But Brunetti's notes reference the number 7 repeatedly. His field guide has a section marked Day 7, Integration, followed by pages that were torn out. Only one piece remained, caught in the back cover by accident. It reads, "The body falls behind. We walk now without it, like vapor on water, like sound without string." And next to that, a crude sketch, the spiral again. But this time, something at the center. Not a stone, not a person, just a hole. A black dot, like an eye, watching outward. You let the flap of the tent fall and step back into the open snow. And that's when you hear it. Footsteps. Not behind, not ahead, not even close, but near. Just to the side of hearing. That trick your brain plays when it thinks you're not alone. You spin, and there's nothing. Of course. But now, the cold feels different. Not biting electric. Like your skin isn't freezing, but charging. You move quickly now. Your breath heavy, fogging the air. Every crunch of snow beneath your boots feels too loud. The silence pushes back harder with every step. And then something impossible. You find a second campsite, a mirror of the first. Same slope, same tent pattern. Even the same broken ski pole stabbed into the ground at a crooked angle. But this one, undisturbed. No footprints, the snow untouched. It's like it's been waiting. Historians don't talk about this second site. In fact, no official record acknowledges its existence. But a retired search and rescue volunteer once described a second footprint deeper in the valley. His story was pulled from the local paper less than 24 hours after it ran. He died of a heart attack the same month, age 42, perfect health before that. You approach the center tent, heart racing now. Your gloved fingers fumble with the flap, and inside blankets, neatly folded. And in the middle, a tape player, old, analog. Battery compartment open, but no batteries inside. Someone left it here intentionally. Next to it, a cassette, hand, labeled in tiny block letters. Listen after the wind. You don't play it, not yet. Instead, you notice what's scratched into the plastic casing. It's that phrase again. Returned, but unchanged. Only this time, the word unchanged has been scratched out and replaced in the same handwriting. Returned, but unfinished. You step back, and in that moment, the wind begins again. Not harsh, not violent, but musical. Carried on it is the faintest trace of harmony. Not melody, not voice, just tones. Balanced like notes held in suspension. It's beautiful and terrifying because you recognize it. The same 4 notes from the buried flute. The same pattern in the tape recorder. The same hum Kiara used to calm herself. It's everywhere now. Not loud, just there. You sit. You don't remember choosing to, but the ground is at your knees, and you lower yourself down. Your hands rest on your thighs. Your breath slows, and in the snow before you, something forms, circles, again. But this time, they form around you, not laid out in branches or stones, but rising as impressions, as if the snow itself remembers the others, and is beginning to remember you. You don't move. You just listen, and the sound grows warmer, like a call, like a welcome, like something ancient, waiting for you to finally understand what it means to let go of weight, of language, of skin. You close your eyes, and the spiral tightens. You open your eyes, but the world is dimmer now. Not darker, just less solid. The edges of the trees blur gently at their tips. The snow has no sparkle, no glitter of ice. Just a soft matte whiteness, like it's been painted in. And the wind, still playing that same 4-note phrase, moves around you like a memory you didn't know you had. You stand again, slower this time, like you're afraid to disturb something sacred. The ground beneath your boots doesn't crunch anymore. It sinks slightly, like powder, but without resistance, like you're walking across ash. Ahead, a tree leans sideways, half fallen, its roots raised like gnarled fingers reaching skyward. You pass beneath it and feel the air shift again. Cooler, but lighter. And up ahead, nestled between 2 stone outcroppings, is something man-made. A doorway. At first you think it's a structure, maybe a hut, or a hunter's hide. But as you draw closer, you realize it's just the shape. No walls, no frame, just a rectangle of air, where the snow doesn't fall, where the wind doesn't reach. Inside it, the ground is bare. Earth, stone, spiral, etched deep, not just scratched in like the others. This one is carved. Old, ancient, maybe, with faint scorch marks tracing each line, like it was once lit. Burned, you step closer, and feel it again, that hum beneath your ribs. Only now it's not just a sound, it's a feeling, like recognition, like memory, like the moment you remember the name of someone you've only met in dreams. You know this place. You don't know how, but you do. Historians still argue whether this was the original source of the phenomenon. Some believe the group stumbled onto an ancient site, pre-Roman, maybe even pre-human, but that theory never made it to print. The archaeologist who submitted it, Daniela Costa, disappeared before publication, literally vanished. Her car was found near a mountain pass, engine cold, doors locked, no tracks, no sign of struggle. Inside the glove compartment was her draft report. The final sentence read, "If this pattern is older than language, then it was never meant to be read. It was meant to be heard." That's when the theory changed from ritual to resonance, from sacrifice to tuning. You look around now and see more than forest. You see design. The trees curve slightly inward, growing in arcs that mimic the spiral's shape. The wind patterns flow around the stones. Even the birds, those rare moments you did hear them, they all sang in fours. 4 notes, 4 calls. A system. 1. You're not just observing anymore. You're inside it. A fringe tidbit. In 1964, a Swiss radio technician hiking through this region reported picking up unassigned frequencies on his handheld receiver. Repeating patterns, 4-second loops. Each transmission began with static, followed by what he called vocalized geometry. He was never able to replicate it, but when asked what it sounded like, he said, "Like a mountain whispering its own coordinates." You wonder now if you're hearing that same thing, or if the mountain is simply tuning itself to you. The ground ahead dips slightly. You follow it without thought. A narrow path curves along a ridge and opens into a basin smooth, untouched. Not a single tree inside it, just snow and stone. And in the center, a figure. Not moving, not walking, just standing. A red coat. You freeze. Not out of fear. Not anymore. It's something else. Reverence. Like seeing a statue of a saint in a ruined cathedral. The figure doesn't turn, doesn't wave, just waits. You step forward. The wind stills. The world holds its breath. And then your radio crackles. Yes, the one you brought. The one that hadn't made a single sound since this hike began. It buzzes, faint, like old vinyl static. Then clicks. And finally, a voice. Broken, glitching, but real. Leave it behind. Not the body, not the boots. Then silence. And then, soft and slow Kiara's hum. That same gentle vibration, rising and falling, human and inhuman at once. You raise the radio to your ear, it crackles again, and a second voice breaks through. Male, older, Etor? Not escape, resonance, only dissolve. And then nothing. The figure in red begins to move, not toward you, past you. Walking along the edge of the basin, hands at their sides. Not in a rush, not performing, just continuing. As if their part is done, and now it's your turn. You want to speak, to ask. But there's no mouth for questions, just air and cold and the spiral at your feet. It's clearer now. What they found, what they followed. It wasn't a sound or a place or even a phenomenon. It was permission to stop resisting, to quiet the noise of identity and become the thing that listens instead of speaks. And they weren't alone. Others have walked here, before and since, carried up by different names, in different decades, wearing different coats. The mountain keeps no list. It just remembers patterns, and now you're part of one. You step into the center of the basin. The snow deepens around your boots. The spiral, invisible beneath the white, hums beneath your feet. And somewhere, in the static of the world, a new note begins. This time 5 tones, a new pattern. Yours. You don't know how long you've been standing there. The snow has stopped. Or maybe it never started. The sky is pale, but not with clouds, just absence. Like a backdrop painted in muted light. And the figure in the red coat? Gone again, but not suddenly. You feel it instead of seeing it. Like a book you are reading has been closed and quietly returned to a shelf. You kneel in the center of the basin now, and the spiral is beneath you, still hidden under the snow, but present, alive. You swear you can feel its pattern pressing upward, like gentle waves through the soles of your feet. And here's the strangest part. You feel calm. Not brave, not resigned, just still. Like the static has finally gone quiet inside your head. The questions don't matter anymore. The files, the theories, the missing pages, it all blurs. Because this isn't a mystery that needs solving. It's a song that needs finishing. Your hand brushes something beneath the snow. You dig, gently. It's not cold here. The snow parts like dust, and you reveal a thin layer of stones, flat, smooth, and carefully arranged. Not another spiral this time. A ring, complete, closed. Inside the ring, a circle of ash, just like the site near Simona's tree. But here, at the very center, is something new. A bell. Tiny, rusted, no clapper inside, completely silent. But the shape deliberate, not decorative, a tool. You lift it. It fits perfectly in your palm. Lighter than it should be. Too light, like it's already rung its last note and emptied itself in the process. You realize something, holding it. This isn't a site of death. It's a threshold where the physical gives way to vibration, where the body gives way to pattern, where the name you once held, your job, your voice, your little personal stories all dissolve like snowflakes in warm water. Historians still argue whether that's what happened to the 14, whether they died or just left. One theory, buried deep in the appendix of a declassified NATO report, suggests the Alps are home to rare magnetic anomalies, natural in origin, but potent enough to trigger hallucinations, time dilation, even synchronized neurochemical release in groups. That might explain the visions, that might explain the hum, but it doesn't explain the spirals, or the stones, or the fact that no animal prints, no wolves, no birds, not even a mouse have ever been recorded at the site of the basin. Life avoids this place, except for us. You set the bell back into the ash and notice the snow swirling in small, tight circles around it. No wind, just motion, like breath inhaling from beneath the earth. And the spiral, again, sharpens in your mind. The paths, the patterns, the people. A fringe researcher once proposed a wild hypothesis that the Alps themselves are a living memory, that the mountain range operates like a biome-scale tuning fork, storing sensory input as vibrational echoes. The theory was mocked, of course, but the title of her unpublished paper, Resonant Consciousness in Non-Anthropogenic Terrain, Evidence from Monte Silenziati, Mountains of Silence, and this basin, this is the heart of it, the place where sound becomes stillness, where people become patterns, where stories aren't told, they're absorbed. You look around one last time and notice faint traces you hadn't seen before. Indentations, not footprints exactly, more like impressions, as though people had once stood here, faced outward, and let themselves be erased. You count them, 14, and just beyond them, a 15th, smaller, slightly out of line. Simona, and then yes, a 16th, faint, newer, shallow, yours. You don't feel fear. You feel the opposite of fear. You feel what they must have felt. The release of being understood without needing to explain, of being seen without being watched, of becoming without deciding. Your name doesn't matter anymore. The trail behind you doesn't matter. You think of the spiral one last time, how it winds inward not as a trap, but as a path. And then, without realizing it, you lie down. Snow brushes your cheek, soft as breath. The hum is no longer distant. It's inside you. No melody, no crescendo, just a single endless note that holds everything you've ever wanted to understand. You close your eyes, and the world folds inward. Darkness, but not the kind you fear. This one is soft, room temperature, a velvety absence that cushions instead of swallows. Your breath comes easy. You're not cold. You're not tired. You're not anything, really. And that's okay. Somewhere far above or far within, you hear the faint echo of snow falling. Not the sound it makes when it hits the ground, but the hush it leaves behind, a kind of absence that carries weight. You float inside that silence until something shifts. A sound begins again, faint, rhythmic, not the spiral tone. This is different, lighter, fragile. It's a voice, no words, just humming. The same four-note loop Kiara used to sing, but this time, it's layered, more than one voice. Male, female, young, old, all humming together in perfect sync. You recognize them, not faces, just presences. The 14. The people whose footprints you followed, whose socks were folded, whose bodies you tried to map. They're not gone. They're here, or maybe you are. You sense them not as individuals anymore, but as tones frequencies, resonating at different points along a shared spectrum. Brunetti is low, steady, grounded. Kiara is bright, a treble that wavers like wind through reeds. Simona clear, deliberate, pulsing. And you? You're not sure yet, but they've made space for you, and that's when you feel it. Not in your ears, not in your bones, but in your outline. A gentle reshaping, like your edges are dissolving. The sharp corners of selfhood softening, bending towards something rounder, wider, the spiral. You think of it again, not as a trap or a maze, but as a process. One you finally joined. Historians still argue whether the Alps were simply a stage for tragedy or a participant in it, whether the mountain amplified the hikers' inner fears or stripped them away. But what if it did neither? What if it welcomed them, welcomed you? You drift through that idea like smoke through light. And suddenly, all those strange behaviors make sense. Why they took off their clothes, why they folded them with care, why they lay down in formation, why not a single scream was recorded. They weren't surrendering to death. They were preparing for reassembly into something weightless, wordless, warm. Somewhere inside the stillness, a memory surfaces. Your memory, a tiny one, something so small you hadn't realized you'd forgotten it. You, as a child, pressing your ear against a seashell, listening for the ocean. That faint whoosh, that invisible presence, that echo of something too big to fit inside a single object. And yet, there it was. That's what this is. Not the sound of something, but the memory of the shape it left behind. You realize, too, that you're not lying down anymore. You're not even still. You're moving. Upward? Inward? Hard to say. But it feels natural, like surfacing through warm water after holding your breath for a very long time. Your arms outstretched, your body light. You expect to rise through snow, through branches, through sky. But instead, you arrive somewhere else. A room, stone walls, soft light, no windows. In the center, a spiral drawn in ash, and in the spiral, a single object. The cassette tape. Same label, Listen After the Wind. Only now it's open, playing, but there's no tape deck, no speakers, just sound. And it's not words, not melody. It's remembrance, the kind that isn't told aloud, but simply known. You kneel beside it. You're not sure why. It just feels like the right shape to make with your body. The voices swell again. Kiara, Brunetti, Simona, the others. They surround you not like a choir, but like gravity, each pulling gently, not to keep you here, but to show you the shape of here-ness. You listen, and what you hear is this. You were never alone. You were never lost. You were only unfinished. And the spiral? It was never meant to trap you. It was meant to tune you. Now you vibrate with them. You belong to the pattern. You stand again. But even that word stand feels clumsy now. You're not moving through space the way you used to. There's no gravity here. Not really. No friction. Just suggestion. Just intention. Your body is a shape made of thought now, and it holds because you choose to hold it. Around you, the stone walls shift, not crumbling, not breaking, rearranging, like pages being turned in a language you can almost read. The room unfolds itself, and you're not surprised to find yourself standing on a mountaintop again. Only this time, it's not snowing. It's not anything. Just sky soft and colorless, like the inside of a cloud. You look down at your hands. They're yours, still, but thinner, more luminous, as though they've been edited by light. Your breath fogs just slightly, and you laugh a small, surprised noise that echoes longer than it should. The others are with you, not beside you, not visible, but woven into the world itself. The way air clings to a bell after it rings, you feel them, their tone, their rhythm. Brunetti's presence is nearby, low, rooted. The sort of energy that thinks in loops, that leaves breadcrumbs in the form of symbols. Chiara hums still, now not to calm herself, but to keep others in tune. Her note holds you steady. You understand now that she wasn't just scared on that mountain. She was trying to help. Even at the end, especially at the end, Simona, hers is the frequency of questioning. She didn't accept. She interrogated the experience, and in doing so, she cracked something open. A seam in the spiral. A way through. And you? You are beginning to harmonize. Historians still argue whether collective consciousness is possible outside of metaphor, whether a shared neural resonance can occur across separate minds. But here, you don't need to prove it. You're living it. Each of you remains distinct, but together, you form something larger. Not a group, a chord. And this is the secret the mountain held. It wasn't haunted. It wasn't cursed. It was resonant, like a cathedral without priests, a tuning fork for memory. And memory doesn't just remember, it records. That's what the spirals were, not signs, not warnings, recordings, etched in stone, in snow, in action. Each fold of clothing, each tent position, each item left behind was not a puzzle. It was a pattern, a kind of sacred geometry, built not from numbers, but from people. And the final piece? The silence. Because every resonance needs one thing to complete it. A pause. A stillness that allows the shape to settle. That gives the echo time to become part of the space. You were the silence. You were the pause. And now, you are the note. You begin to descend the mountain, slowly. Not walking, not flying, fading. Not in the sad sense, in the beautiful sense. The way sunlight fades into dusk, the way music fades into memory. Below you, the forest waits. The trails wind backward and forward at once. The tents, the journals, the burnt soot, the missing files, all there, but quieter now, less urgent, more complete. You pass the site where Simona was found, and you pause. She is no longer seated, no longer stitched shut. She is light now. And like you, she has remembered her shape. She drifts beside you, and together, you return. Not to the start of the trail, not to your car, but to that small, quiet room where stories begin. The moment before the match is struck, the breath before the hum. You know what must come next, because the mountain hasn't finished tuning, and the world still forgets too easily. So someone must hum. Someone must leave spirals. Someone must begin the pattern again. And now, softly, the world tilts forward. Gravity returns. Skin wraps itself around you. And breath? Breath becomes yours again. But something is different now. You are not returning from a dream. You are carrying it back. The cold returns first. Not cruel, just real. Sharp enough to remind you where skin ends and air begins. You blink slowly. Above you, the sky is no longer pale. It's midnight blue, spattered with stars that feel closer than they should be. And beneath you, snow. You're lying on your back in the center of the basin. The spiral is gone, at least, to the eye. But you can still feel it beneath the surface, humming, gently, waiting maybe, or sleeping. You're not sure anymore whether it matters. You sit up. Your coat is still on. Your gloves. Your boots. Everything where it should be. The world hasn't rewound itself, it simply allowed you to return. But you're not the same. Your heartbeat is slower. Not in a medical way, in a musical way. Like it's syncing with something larger, something ancient, something that lives in the wind and the ash and the rhythm of the stone. You look around. The trees seem farther apart. Or maybe you're just seeing wider now. The air doesn't crackle like before. The static is gone. What remains is a soft echo, like the final note of a lullaby played long ago. And then you spot it. A shape in the snow. A trail. Faint footprints, leading out of the basin. Not yours. Someone else was here, or is here. You rise and follow them, step by step, carefully. Not out of fear, out of reverence. This feels like following the trail of a ghost you once were. And in a way, maybe that's exactly what it is. Because the person who entered this forest didn't leave. You did. You pass the fallen tree again, its roots clawing at the stars. You pass the collapsed tent still there, still sagging, but now it feels like a relic, not a clue. A page from a chapter that no longer needs solving. You reach the ridge, and the slope drops into the forest below. The wind lifts your hair gently, and for a moment, you think you hear it again. That hum. But it's not from the spiral. It's from you. A tone, soft and low, thrumming in your chest. Like the mountain has left something behind in you. Or maybe you left something behind in it. Either way, the exchange was fair. And now, you begin your descent. The snow grows heavier again, but it doesn't bite. It lands on your shoulders like a blanket. It coats your hood, soft and silent. The trees part as you move between them. Your boots leave clean prints, real ones, solid ones. But still, no birds, just you. And the echo of a tune that no longer needs to be sung aloud. A few kilometers down, your car waits. Inside, the map still rests on the passenger seat. The thermos, still half full. The notebook open to a blank page. You pick up your pen and write just one word. Returned. You don't need to explain. The story will reach who it needs to. And those who truly listen, they'll hear it. In the wind, in the silence, in the space between footsteps. Because the spiral goes on. Not around you, through you. You turn the ignition. The headlights flicker on. And behind you, far behind, high on the ridge, you see the faintest shimmer of red. A coat. Motionless. Watching. Or remembering. And then it's gone. Just like it should be. So now, the story quiets. The last pages settle like dust. The spiral, still pulsing beneath the snow, returns to its sleep. And you, still lying in bed, feel your breath slow. Your limbs grow heavier now. Your fingers, relaxed. Your eyelids, warm with the weight of rest. There's no more wind, no more sound. Just the hum of your own heart, low and rhythmic, matching the spiral's last note. You picture the mountain again, not the danger, not the questions, just the silence. A calm place, high above everything. Cold, but kind. Vast, but familiar. The snow falls there endlessly, softly, the way dreams settle after a long night. You don't need to understand everything. You were never meant to. Some mysteries aren't puzzles to solve. They're songs to listen to, patterns to remember, dreams to carry. So let your thoughts drift now, like breath through pine. Let your body sink into the quiet. Let the last glow of the story flicker and fade. You're safe, you're warm, and the spiral? It turns without rush, without end, and it waits for no one because you were never behind. You were always exactly where you needed to be. Now sleep, sleep deep, sleep easy. And if you dream of snow, let it fall. End of script. Sweet dreams.